Thank you. Thanks for having me to speak to you all today. You know, when the guys from Unity asked me to come give a speech, you know, it's important to know who your audience is. And they said, well, we want you to come tell everybody how great Unity is to a bunch of Unity developers. So I felt pretty good about that. But I figured you want to hear more than that. And so, you know, I think we're all here for the same reason, is that we all want to make a living creating games that are special to us, and we want to be in control, and we want to have our passion turn into profit. So the three things I want to talk about today are perseverance, crowdsourcing, and integrity. And you know, I've given speeches in the past, but generally you're selling something. I'm selling a product or whatever, and I'm not really selling anything today other than, you know, kind of my passion for the business. And, you know, I kind of have an admission that I almost quit making games a couple of years ago because of just the disillusionment with being a developer working for publishers. It's a very tough process out there, you know, the lack of integrity at many levels and the way that people are treated, and not just myself, but other developers, friends of mine. And so, you know, it just, it wasn't the way it used to be. And, you know, I think there's a light now at the end of this world. And I have a second admission, which is I used to be a publisher. But things were much different back then. Hold on, there we go. So I'm going to give you a real quick background on myself. You know, I know a lot of people in the audience are pretty young, so they don't know my background. But my career has come full circle since the 80s, both in business fundamentals, what I'm trying to do, and even the franchises that I'm working on. I started off as a programmer, as many of you have, and I did my first game when I was 19 years old, when it was all retail. And kind of a funny story, my kind of guerrilla marketing was that I'd made the game, and you know, I did everything, programming, art, music. I didn't know how to do music, so there was no music. It was much easier back then. And I made the game. My entire budget was one ad, and it was in Soft Talk magazine. And so I was trying to get distribution into the retail shelves. So I would call stores up around the country and say, hey, do you have Demon's Forge? I said, I've never heard of it. I said, oh, I saw an ad for it in one of the magazines. You should check it out. So they'd open the magazine, they look, they find my ad, and they say, yeah, this looks pretty good. I go, I'd love to buy a copy. They say, hold on. Hang up the phone. My other phone would ring. I'd pick up the phone and take the order. So that was my first guerrilla marketing. So I went on to create Interplay in 1983. And you know, our slogan back then was by gamers, for gamers, and I see that a lot used these days, but it was very much true for us. We were all hardcore gamers doing it. I started making adventure games first for Activision. This is a different Activision back at the time. This was back when they were more of a console, Atari VCS console company. And we made their first floppy disk game called Mind Shadow. And that was a big deal about, you know, should games be on floppy disks. But one of the things, then I should say, then I went on to do Bard's Tale in '85, which was a #1 hit. Yeah. Thank you. But one of the things I faced, which I think a lot of you will commiserate with, is that I wanted to build a business. You know, I wanted to not just be the guy answering the phones. I wanted to have medical insurance. I wanted to have artists do the art, musicians do the music. And most of the business at that time was run or being dominated by basically 2- and 3-man shows. You know, Dr. J and Larry Bird Go One-on-One was one guy did it. So when they sold a couple 100,000 copies as a single individual, that was fantastic, but hard to build a business. So I had several #1 hits, but we weren't making very much money. So I needed to change my deal, and that's what kind of forced me to become a publisher at the time. And so in 1988, we launched Battle Chess on the Amiga, and that went right to #1, and that put us on the map. And then I started to build the momentum from there. I did another role-playing game, Dragon Wars, in '89. I went and got the Star Trek license for the original series. We did a series of adventure games. We did the 25th anniversary in 1992. And just to age some of you in this room, I read a couple of weeks ago that they just did a Star Trek Next Generation 25th anniversary last year. So that was good. That kind of woke me up to how old I was. I also started to hire or give contracts to and mentor some new young developers. One of the first ones was Silicon and Synapse. They were guys that I've known since I was a kid. And of course, they went on to become Blizzard Entertainment. We actually used to have a minority interest in that company, and we helped sort of get them launched into the industry. We continued on with success. We released Descent in 1995, which also went to #1, which is one of my favorite games. And I continued my pursuit of role-playing games. And you'll know what we did. We went on to do Fallout in 1995, which is very big. It's a great game, great game. And we really started to hit our stride in the 90s, and I continued to sign new and talented developers. We signed a new unknown developer in '94, BioWare, of course, to help them. They did a game called Shattered Steel. It was not a success, but we gave them another shot, and they did Baldur's Gate. We also signed Treyarch to do Die by the Sword, another new company which we helped kind of give a break to. So by the late 90s, we were a top 5 PC company. We were EA, Activision, LucasArts, us. I mean, we were doing good product. But the business was changing rapidly, and even that was not enough. And I had lost some focus at the company. There was a lot of changes, but the PC market wasn't what it was. And all the way up till kind of just at the turn of the century, and we'd shipped Fallout 1 and 2, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Icewind Dale, and Torment, but it was the console business that was coming on strong during that time. And the console market was really proven to be king. And if you look at a lot of the companies that are left standing today, they had some major console franchise that really helped get them through that period. With Activision, it was Tony Hawk. We all used to be battling out with that. We all used to be kind of an even playing field. Take-Two, Grand Theft Auto. THQ had WWF, and EA, of course, they always had sports and more. They were always in a class into themselves in terms of franchises. And I actually had found a buyer for the company, which a Chinese company, but my majority shareholder ended up thinking they could do a better job. And so after 17 years, I flipped him the keys and said, good luck. Because it really wasn't much fun for me anymore. I was spending all my time doing anything but product development. So in some ways, I think it was kind of an end of an era, certainly for me, but certainly for a type of game that was made. The industry was becoming more console-oriented, and online play was becoming more predominant, and the budgets were spinning up very fast. Bard's Tale cost me $30,000, I think was the budget when we did it. Descent was about $300,000 by just turn of the century, $3 million, and then you had marketing, and now it's $30 million. It was really this uptick that was changing where we'd come from. So there was little room for kind of the handcrafted sort of experience of games that we like to play and that we like to make. These projects became like super tankers, sort of rushing at 200 miles an hour. So I think we kind of entered what I consider kind of the dark ages as we went into the first part of the century, because it wasn't until like around 2004, 2005 that Steam, XBLA, and PSN launched. Flash sites started to come online, like Congregate or Armor Games or Spill Games. But even with all those things happening, it would be several years before you could make any money from them. But then sort of in 2007, the light kind of began to shine as those initiatives kicked in, the iTouch came on board, and so slowly the Flash started to create an ecosystem for which smaller developers could make some money. And the digital download business also became another source of revenue. We finally had a way to get directly to our consumers, which hadn't existed before. Now, with that change, it was things started to move at an exponential rate in terms of change. I've been in this industry a long time. I've seen more changes in the last 48 months that I've seen in the 26 years prior to that. Back in the day, in the 90s, we would see maybe one major shift per quarter. New console would come out every couple of years, or we'd go from floppy to CD, or the internet, or maybe somebody would get an exclusive distribution deal with Walmart. We'd all bitch and complain about that. But those were they weren't major shifts. Now, it's iOS. It's down to 99 cents. Now free to play dominates 70%. Android's a market. Android isn't a market. It flashes in, flashes out. HTML5, tablet computing, cloud computing. It goes on and on. I mean, I think if you were to leave this industry for 90 days, you'd come back and practically be lost. It is moving so fast. And the thing is, with the digital age, these companies can flip a switch and change the entire business dynamic overnight. Business practices that were allowed would not be allowed, or vice versa. So after 30 years I've been doing this, I find myself in a sea of predominantly small teams again. So here I am coming back full circle. Or there's a bit of a twist now, which is there are the huge developers, which didn't exist back then, but they typically have output deals with publishers to keep them alive. But for the most part, it's kind of the indie scene, and it's the small group. And so this kind of brings me to Wasteland.